Hey everyone! Welcome back to your go-to channel for all things coins and collectibles. Today, we're diving into the history, features, and circulated value of the 1961 USA 1-cent coin. Could this penny be worth more than just 1 cent? Stick around to find out. This small but historic coin has been in circulation for over 60 years. But what makes it special? Let's start with its design. The 1961 Lincoln cent features the iconic portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. This design was first introduced in 1909 by Victor David Brenner to commemorate Lincoln's 100th birthday. Above Lincoln's head, we see the words, "In God We Trust," and to the left and right, "Liberty," and the year 1961, respectively. On the reverse, we have the famous wheat penny design, officially known as the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959. The Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo, replaced the wheat ears that were seen on earlier pennies. Look closely, and you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln in the memorial. Now, let's talk about what this coin is made of. The 1961 penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It has a diameter of 19 millimeters and weighs about 3.11 grams. Since it's mostly copper, its melt value can fluctuate depending on copper prices. For example, when copper prices are high, even common circulated pennies like this one can be worth more than a cent just for their metal content. Alright, let's talk about the different varieties of the 1961 penny. There are two main versions, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint. The Philadelphia Mint coins have NO Mint mark, while the Denver Mint coins have a small D Mint mark below the year. The Philadelphia Mint produced about 753 million coins, while the Denver Mint made around 1.7 billion. This means that neither variety is particularly rare, but errors and high-grade examples can still bring premium value. Now, let's get into the value of the 1961 penny in circulated condition. If you find one in your pocket change, it's usually only worth face value, 1 cent. However, if it's in slightly better condition, like a brown uncirculated coin, it can sell for 3 to 5 cents due to copper content. Some 1961 pennies have noticeable doubling in the letters and date. These can sell for $50 to $500, depending on the strength of the doubling. If a coin is struck off-center, it could be worth $20 to $100 based on the percentage of the error. Some 1961 D pennies show signs of the mint mark being punched twice. These are collectible and can be worth $10 to $50. So, should you keep your 1961 pennies? Absolutely. While most circulated pennies aren't worth much, searching for high-grade or error varieties could lead to some hidden treasures. Also, since these pennies are mostly copper, their metal value may rise in the future, making them a great long-term hold for coin collectors and investors. And that wraps up our deep dive into the 1961 USA 1-cent coin. Do you have one in your collection? Let us know in the comments below. The 1961 Lincoln cent is part of the long-running Lincoln penny series, which began in 1909 to commemorate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. This series replaced the Indian head cent and became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. The original Lincoln penny, introduced in 1909, featured a wheat ears design on the reverse, created by designer Victor David Brenner. However, in 1959, to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, the Lincoln Memorial design was introduced, replacing the wheat ears. By 1961, the U.S. economy was growing, and pennies were a critical part of everyday transactions. The Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, was still relatively new, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies to meet demand. The U.S. Mint struck more than 2.4 billion pennies in 1961, split between the Philadelphia and Denver Mints. Since these coins were heavily used in commerce, most circulated examples today show significant wear. The 1961 penny is 95% copper, which means its value is tied to copper prices. At the time, a penny was still worth its face value in purchasing power, but by the 21st century, rising copper prices made even common pennies valuable for their metal content. The year 1961 was historically significant. It was the height of the Cold War, and the United States was competing with the Soviet Union in the space race. In April 1961, the Soviet Union sent Yuri Gagarin into space, while in May, the U.S. responded with Alan Shepard's spaceflight. While these events didn't directly impact the penny, they shaped the era in which the 1961 coin was minted. By 1961, the U.S. Mint was improving coin production technology. However, some errors and varieties still occurred, such as double dies and repunched mint marks, making certain 1961 pennies valuable to collectors. Just 3 years after the 1961 penny was struck, in 1964, the U.S. Mint stopped producing 90% silver coins, marking a shift in American coinage. Although pennies remained copper until 1982, the transition of other coins away from precious metals reflected the changing economic landscape. The 1961 Lincoln cent may seem like just another common penny, but it represents an important period in U.S. history. It was a time of economic growth, technological advancements, and geopolitical tension. Whether you're a collector, a historian, or just someone who loves old coins, the 1961 penny remains an interesting and affordable piece of American history. Today, we're diving deep into the history, key features, and circulated value of the 1980 USA 1-cent coin. You might be surprised at what collectors are willing to pay for some special variations. So stick around. The 1980 Lincoln cent is part of the long-running Lincoln Memorial Penny series, first introduced in 1959 to commemorate Abraham Lincoln's 150th birthday. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the obverse features Lincoln's right-facing portrait, while the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, showcases the Lincoln Memorial. The E Pluribus Unum motto is inscribed above the monument, and if you look closely, you can even see the statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. In 1980, the U.S. Mint produced a staggering 14.4 billion pennies across 3 mint locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The mint marks can be found just below the date. The 1980 Lincoln cent is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. But did you know that in just 2 years, in 1982, the composition changed to a zinc core with a thin copper coating? That means 1980 pennies are some of the last fully copper cents, making them more valuable for their metal content. Each 1980 penny weighs about 3.11 grams, while modern zinc pennies weigh only 2.5 grams. Alright, let's get to the main question. How much is a 1980 penny worth today in circulated condition? So, while most circulated 1980 pennies are still just pocket change, higher-grade uncirculated coins can sell for a few dollars. But here's where it gets interesting. Some 1980 pennies with errors can be worth significantly more. Let's look at a few key error types. If a coin is misaligned when struck, it can be worth $50 to $500 depending on the degree of misalignment. If you notice doubling on Liberty or the date, it could be worth $100 or more. If the mint mark appears doubled or misaligned, collectors will pay $10 to $50 for these variations. If a penny was mistakenly struck on a foreign coin blank, it could be worth hundreds. So, always check your change. You never know when you might find an error coin worth a small fortune. If you find a valuable 1980 penny, be sure to store it properly. Use a coin flip, plastic holder, or an album to prevent scratches and oxidation. Quick cash, but often lower offers. Best for rare coins with high demand. Great for networking and getting expert opinions. So there you have it. While most 1980 pennies aren't rare, their copper content makes them worth slightly more than face value. And if you're lucky enough to find an error coin, you could have a real treasure on your hands. The 1980 USA 1-cent coin, commonly known as the Lincoln Memorial Penny, is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, which began in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. Before 1909, U.S. 1-cent coins featured Lady Liberty in various designs. The Lincoln Cent was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. Designed by Victor David Brenner in 1959, the U.S. Mint replaced the wheat design with the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo, to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. By 1980, the Lincoln Memorial design had been in circulation for 21 years. The U.S. Mint struck a massive 14.4 billion pennies in 1980 to meet demand. Before 1980, pennies from the Philadelphia Mint had no mint mark. In 1980, the U.S. Mint started using a P mint mark for Philadelphia coins, but only on nickels, dimes, quarters, and half dollars, not pennies. The Philadelphia pennies still had no mint mark, making them look identical to earlier issues. The early 1980s saw a rise in copper prices, making it expensive to continue producing pennies with 95% copper. In 1982, the U.S. Mint began transitioning to a zinc core with a thin copper plating, permanently changing the penny's composition. This makes the 1980 Lincoln penny one of the last fully copper cents, increasing its value for metal collectors. It represents the end of the copper penny era, before the change in 1982. High production numbers mean many still exist in circulation today. It remains a favorite among collectors, especially those looking for errors and high-grade coins. Today, we're diving into the history, details, and circulated value of the 1984 USA 1-cent coin. Could this small penny hold big surprises? Let's find out. The 1984 1-cent coin, commonly known as the Lincoln penny, is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series. This coin features the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor D. Brenner back in 1909. On the reverse, we see the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 by Frank Gasparro. Did you know? If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you can actually see a tiny engraving of Lincoln's statue inside the monument. The 1984 penny is made of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This was part of a major change in 1982 when the U.S. Mint switched from solid copper to a copper-plated zinc composition to reduce production costs. With billions of these pennies in circulation, most 1984 pennies you find today are only worth face value, just 1 cent. If they're in worn condition, their value doesn't increase much, but hold on, some rare varieties are worth big money. Here's where things get exciting. There are some valuable error coins that collectors go crazy for. Let's check them out. This is the most famous error for this year. If you look at Lincoln's ear, you'll notice a strong doubling. Depending on condition, this error penny can sell for anywhere between $50 and $400 plus. If the design is not centered properly, it's an off-center strike. A 10% off-center error might bring in $10 to $20, while a 50% off-center error with a full date can go for $100 or more. Other errors like clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing, or broad strikes, where the rim is missing, can be worth $20 to $100, depending on severity. So, should you keep your 1984 pennies? Absolutely. Most are worth face value, but finding an error could mean big money. Go check your coin jars, piggy banks, and pocket change. You never know what treasure you might find. The 1984 Lincoln cent is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, which was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the coin has become one of the most recognizable pieces of U.S. currency. The original Lincoln cent featured wheat ears on the reverse. The Lincoln Memorial design, created by Frank Gasparro, replaced the wheat ears to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln cent has undergone further changes, including a one-year 4-design series in 2009 and the Union Shield reverse from 2010 onward. The 1984 penny belongs to the Lincoln Memorial design era, 1959 to 2008, and was produced in large quantities to meet the demands of circulation. Up until 1982, Lincoln cents were primarily made of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. However, rising copper prices led to a major composition change. In mid-1982, the U.S. Mint switched to a copper-plated zinc composition, 97.5% zinc, 2.5% copper. The 1984 penny followed this new standard, making it part of the post-copper era of U.S. cents. With a total production exceeding 13.7 billion, the 1984 Lincoln cent remains one of the most common pennies in circulation today. The 1984 penny features a small engraving of Lincoln's statue inside the Lincoln Memorial, visible under magnification. Many collectors look for the 1984 double-ear error, a highly valuable variety that occurred due to a minting mistake. Despite being a common coin, some 1984 pennies with errors or high-grade conditions can be worth hundreds of dollars. In today's video, we're diving into the 1988 USA 1-cent coin, also known as the Lincoln penny. You might think it's just a common coin, but what if I told you some 1988 pennies can be worth a lot more than face value? Stick around as we uncover its history, key details, and the secrets behind its circulated value. The 1988 Lincoln penny was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver, D, and San Francisco, S-proof coins. Like other pennies from this era, it features a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor D. Brenner, first introduced in 1909. The Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparro, used from 1959 until 2008. Made of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper, which started in 1982 when the U.S. Mint switched from solid copper to a copper-plated zinc coin to save costs. Most circulated 1988 Lincoln pennies aren't worth much more than face value, simply because millions were produced. In worn condition, these typically sell for 1 to 5 cents. But hold on, some special varieties and errors can make your penny a real jackpot. Let's talk about those. This is a big one. Some 1988 pennies were accidentally struck using a 1989 reverse die. You can spot this by looking at the letter G in FG, Frank Gasparro's initials, on the back of the coin. If your 1988 penny has an off-center design, it could be worth $10 to $50 plus, depending on how off-center it is. Some 1988 pennies show doubling on Lincoln's face or the lettering. These can be worth $25 to $500, depending on the strength of the doubling. Want to check if your 1988 penny is valuable? Here's what to do: use a magnifying glass to inspect for doubling or misprints. The cleaner and shinier, the higher the value. A standard 1988 penny should weigh 2.5 grams. If it's different, it might be a special variety. If you think you have a rare penny, consider sending it to PCGS or NGC for authentication.so. Is your 1988 Lincoln penny a hidden treasure? Most circulated ones are only worth a cent, but if you find a rare error or high-grade version, you could be holding a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Do you have any 1988 pennies in your collection? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more valuable coin videos. See you in the next one.